Actually, I want to say about Kristjan. Of course, as I was told, he's a good singer, but nevertheless, it's also important that he has made career in his life. It means that he's a former developer, and now he works as a test manager, and is actually heard in the morning. Then Tiit is now head of Skype, so this is how Kristjan is going on. But what we can say, the next topic is anatomy of testing, ASA, emergency room practices. And as I see, Kristjan is also ready to jump to the floor and give you overview on how do you do it. So please prepare questions again. I hope you know what happens if you haven't prepared. So yes, let's go. Let's start.
Thank you. Can you hear me well in the back? Right. Like the guy said, my name is Kristjan. Last time I was here in this building, in another wing of it, performing, I was with a big band. You know, 4 saxophones, bunch of trombones, trumpets, drums, bass, so on. We had an enthusiastic crowd of 4. So it's nice to have so many of you here today. I'm here representing ASA. We are a quality service provider, which means we don't just test. We're passionate about quality in all aspects. So the title of my presentation has changed just a little bit. Maybe you've noticed, maybe not. But as probably most of you know, there are different methodologies for software development, different approaches. Sometimes things can create panic. In my presentation, I'm going to talk about some of our customers who have come to us in panic. Of course, it's easy to do things right when you do them by the book, or is it? However, let's go to these methodologies. Can you see these? Can you recognize them? Raise your hands if you don't recognize something on the screen. Excellent. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. Let's look at Exhibit A a little more closely. Can you find testing in this process? Raise your hand if you can find testing. Can you get a microphone to someone there? Which one? Whoever. You choose.
There's a happy volunteer here.
Okay, I'm game.
So, where is testing?
Ideally, hiding in verification.
Ideally.
Ideally, yes.
Well, isn't that more like where acceptance testing should be? So I'm
sure.
I agree that testing is here, but it should be everywhere, shouldn't it?
Of course.
Right. So now we have another one. This is not as easy as the last one. There is no verification or testing or something like that written on it. Raise your hand if you know where testing is hidden. Right. Can we move the microphone somewhere? Or is it still... Raise your hands again, a bit higher.
The testing is hidden in the loop.
Somewhere around the arrows? Would you agree?
I would agree that it's in the middle part and almost in every part of the loop.
Exactly. Like I said on my previous slide. Now, Another exhibit, it has testing written all over it. Yet again, we should do testing all the time. Now, we come to this slide. This chart that was published at least in 1976, and then Barry Boehm has talked about it over and over again in his speeches and in his papers, and others have talked about it. The earlier we find the bugs, the cheaper they are to fix. I think everyone would agree with that. Yet still we come across this attitude that it's too expensive to test at the beginning. We don't have the specifications ready yet. We don't want to let testers see them in the state they're in for some reason. They always seem to think, our customers and other developers and in all sorts of projects, people seem to think that there is always time and money to redo things later. Well, it turns out that there is, because you cannot go to the market with a non-working product. But enough of the introduction. We will now go to our emergency room. You will see real-life situations as they have played out. The names and numbers have been changed. Names for confidentiality, numbers for sometimes dramatic effect, sometimes also confidentiality. If you recognize yourself in these, some of you might, don't worry, we won't tell it's you. If you want them to recognize, well, stand up. But otherwise, no worries. I will start with an extremely positive example. The company was named Wolf. They wanted to change their name to Strawberry. They did. They assumed that this is a simple change. No testing required. How many times have we heard that? We don't need to test this. We never need to test anything. It's a simple thing. We just search and replace. What's to test? Just one SQL query. That's it. Very simple. In reality, the word wolf in Estonian takes different forms, different cases. Hunt, hundi, hunti, like do, did, done in English, or just a quick Finnish translation, susi, suden, sutta. It's not that easy to find it in all the documents if you just search for wolf. And there are also graphical representations such as logos, letterheads, whatever. Now, before I was talking about methodologies. Can anyone recognize, based on what I just described, which methodology was used in the company named Wolf? Raise your hand if you can. No one, right? And so my point here is that it is hard for even those of you who know which methodologies exist to recognize the methodology based on the facts. You need to know what the methodology is to do anything about it. All right, but moving on, what would you do in this situation? You know that you have a customer who's changing their name from Wolf to Strawberry. How do you attack this situation? Any ideas, anyone? No? Okay. What we did, we had a tester. She had a talk with the system administrator who was in charge of doing this, did a review of the query, and and also added a bit of manual work there, searching for logos, etc. And the methodology here was waterfall. Should be very safe, right? Nothing bad could ever happen with waterfall. All right, so our conclusions from this case, which was, as I said, completely positive. Nothing bad happened because we caught the change before something bad could happen. Listen to what is being said, what is being done, what is being planned. Make your point so the people in charge understand that testing is important in this case. Ask the right questions at the right time. And as we all know, testing is a mindset, a lifestyle, a set of values that you can learn, but it's also good to have them within you. All right, moving on to the next case study. Fields and Company. They had a sort of a CRM on steroids, as I've written here. They had plenty of customers using the system, also internal users. Lots of back-end systems joining into several front ends. Almost 10 development partners during this whole process. And just one project manager to rule them all. Working with one partner can be difficult. I know this from experience. Working with 10 at the same time? Right. So, it was assumed that everyone knows what they're doing, that the dates have already been agreed on, set in stone, so to say, and testing was planned. The client, in this case, made an excellent choice. They contracted us at the very beginning of the project. Nothing could go wrong then, right? Well, unfortunately, we are also people, and people make mistakes. This time, we made a mistake. We hope we've learned from it. Different people interpreted the dates differently. So, when the development partner thought of a date as a shipment date, the others assumed that this was the date when the system was supposed to go live. So there was no time for any acceptance testing in between. And for some reason, well, the reason that I've already described, we failed to notice this because there were so many partners, the picture was quite unclear, and we assumed also that the client knows what dates they have agreed with who. So what would you do? How would you save this situation? You're about to go live. The dates are set in stone, such as you've already arranged marketing campaigns. Your whole client base knows that this is the date that the new system is supposed to go online. Yet, in the background, you find out that the developer is planning to finish their first version of it at the same date that the thing goes live. How would you test the product? Any ideas, anyone? No hands? No hands, okay. Now what we did some frantic last-minute testing so that the most critical set of features was tested. We had all parties in a conference call, thanks to Skype, and we had quick cycles of critical exploratory testing. It turned out pretty well. It went live without any major glitches. There were some things here and there, but nothing big, nothing bad. The methodologies were varied because there were different partners using different methodologies internally. One partner used agile development as an excuse. When we asked them, when can you ship this product for acceptance testing? They said, we don't know, we're being agile. So, this is not to say that agile is bad. Agile is good when done properly. But in this case, yeah. So in conclusion, from this case study, we found that teamwork does the trick, and also proper communication. And with agile methodologies, you need lots more involvement. You cannot just have one project manager from the client interacting with the developers. They cannot work on their own. Now our third patient file is forever limited. Another huge system with several interlinked components, different development partners. All the components on their own work, but the integrations, not so much. What we assumed, and they assumed, and our tester assumed, that the tester reports the bugs, forwards them to the project manager, who recognizes who is to do what based on this bug report, and the bug gets fixed. Anybody want to guess what happened? The developer received the bug, tested it, found that it works on his side, marked it works for me, yet the integrations are still broken. Somehow there's a situation where everything works, but nothing works. Sound familiar? What would you do? How would you solve this weird mystery? Yes, can we have a
question actually?
All right.
What happened to the tester's self-esteem? Did they just allow the developers to send it back to the quarter and to the, okay, it works for you, that's fine. I'm so scared of you.
No.
What happened to them?
The tester's self-esteem, thankfully, wasn't damaged too badly. Well.
Why didn't they stand up for their boss?
Yeah, this didn't go on for too long. This was just a short time. Weird, nevertheless. So, what would you do? Yes.
Don't let the developers make the bug triage decision. Why were they in that position anyway?
Well, they were outside contractors, so you couldn't. You had to assign the bug to someone, and also this was kind of an agile environment here. So yeah, the developer didn't find the bug, or found that the bug wasn't there when he went to check on it. So our tester suggested that we have a meeting with all the parties present. And it worked. They came together, they discussed these bugs, why they're happening, why they're not getting fixed. This was handled with conference calls because it's quite expensive to have meetings all the time. But yeah, it's working now. Now, to conclude this case study, again, communication and negotiation skills that the tester in this case needed to be able to persuade the others to have a meeting. In some environments, it might not have happened. But in the end, it could have been a disaster if the tester finds bugs, reports the bugs, they don't get fixed, everyone says that there are no bugs, and then you go live with a system that doesn't work. And also, problem recognition is a very excellent skill that you need to have when you're a tester or doing software development in any way. Now, since I've been quick and you haven't had many questions, I'm going to go on with a bit of a bonus track. I was going to talk about 3 cases, but now I'm on my 4th. This was an international CRM system. Funny. 3 last cases have all been CRMs in some way or another. It's a very popular thing to develop these days, I suppose. The developer was lacking in resources. The project was behind schedule. So they asked the client, who had 2 in-house testers, could you help us out? The client, of course, said, yes, of course, we can help you with testing. Now, the client assumed that the developer would continue testing with the little resources that they had for this. Oh boy. In reality, the developer stopped testing altogether. So all of the development testing was now the responsibility of the client. And they had 2 testers for this. The client became overwhelmed with testing. They had to include people from the business side with no training. They didn't have Miley to help them. And these untrained testers managed to sometimes create more problems than they solved. They reported bugs, but the developers couldn't read these bug reports right, because they were written so that I clicked this and it doesn't work. Right. What exactly did you click, and what is it supposed to do? Why do you think it doesn't work? Whatever. So the bug reports were going back and forth between developers and testers who were untrained business people. Right. What would you do? Again, thank you for your input. Now what we did, the customer, in this case, turned to us in a whole lot of panic, you would assume, because their live dates were approaching faster and faster, and they were completely buried in a mountain of untested code. So we, in this case, rented out 2 professional testers, did some exploratory testing, because of course there were no test cases prepared for this, and there was no time to prepare them either. So we just went in with the specifications and started drilling, and wrote bug reports that in the end saved the day. In this case, we conclude that experience does matter, or training. It could have been solved with training the testers. However, they did have reminders, constant reminders over email and also some meetings where they discussed what a bug report should look like. But to an inexperienced tester, just dumping this information on them doesn't do the trick. You need to explain a bit more, and in this case there was no time to do this, so there was more time to just ping pong the bug reports there. Yes, I think we have another question.
I think my voice may be loud enough, or no?
I can hear you.
Yeah, you can. Did you use only written reports? I mean, maybe it would have helped if the whatever business side people you use, they could have created short recordings of what they were doing. But of course, you know, processing that information on the developer side takes time too.
True.
On the other hand, the developers don't read all the steps in the written report either every time. So it's, you know, either or.
Indeed.
It could have maybe been easier for them to explain what they were doing and, you know, create a 1 or 2 minute recording.
We even had those at some points. Our professional testers had to do some recordings because in some cases the bugs that we found, they were repeatable, but to do that you had to go through a very difficult process. So we did use recordings also. Yes?
So all 4 case studies have basically been examples of all 4 case studies have basically been examples of what we would call pulling the fat out of the fire.
Yeah.
Is every project that you guys have worked on basically a barely mitigated disaster, or do you get to work on some good ones that aren't interesting because they go so smoothly?
Well, sometimes we do get some of them that go smoothly, but a lot of the work we do is basically this. So we have quite enough experience in saving, in going in for last minute rescue. Well, okay, I have some time still to go. So I'll just go in for another case study. In this case, we couldn't save the day. This is to show that, you know, sometimes you cannot do anything. Badcom Communication Corporation, Badcom Corporation, yeah. So they asked us to do a performance test. We did a performance test. And we found that the system was 200 times slower than specified. They fixed it. We did another performance test. They fixed it again. Another performance test. Until we got to about 20 times slower than specified. So a huge improvement on the original, but still way too slow. Now, they assumed that the requirements exceed all expectations. They are unrealistic, so the bar is set very high. And they thought, well, we can go under it, it doesn't matter. People won't be using it so much that these performance issues even matter. So there. They went live with a system that was 20 times slower than specified. It turned out that the specifications were more or less correct, the requirements, I mean. And now the system is too slow for anyone to use. Again, I won't mention what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think what saved today is communication between the stakeholders.
Yep. So to take all the points that we did into one picture, we listened, we talked, we had meetings, we had conference calls, we wrote good bug reports, so on. So, what is this? This is basically, like you said, communication. So for testing, for good testing, you of course need testing skills, background knowledge, experience, all these different methodologies, whatever. But even if you have that, if you lack in communication, in teamwork, and in problem-solving skills, you might be in trouble at the end of the day. And we also found that we feel that the tester is a good mediator, or should be a good mediator between all the other parties. Because we are independent in testing, we don't have any issues dealing with one side or the other. We're not biased, so to say. We don't side with the developer or with the client. We try to give a balanced opinion. So there, thank you. And why is there a cat on the screen? Any ideas? Well, one thing is that the future of the internet, as you all may know, is all cats all the time. We've seen trends that are pointing to this. And also, you cannot spell communication without cat. Thank you.
Any questions?
Or stories?
So again, excuse me, to return to my point about the barely mitigated disaster, I mean, you were able to resolve some problems in 3 out of the 4 case studies, but I take it you're not maintaining that these were in any way optimal outcomes, that they were acceptable in the context of the other option was outright failure.
Yes.
So if you had a chance and could hit the rewind button on those projects, what would you have changed in the process to have tried to avoid getting to the sorry situation that you ended up having to try to clean up?
Well, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but all in all, I would say that having the tester just look at the documentation or the requirements, for instance, an experienced tester doing a review of the requirements and being involved in the process from there on, I think could help a lot.
So earlier tester involved.
Yep.
More questions? Now's this time.
This side.
Thank you. It seems that in most of those projects you had basically a lot of different companies contracted to do some parts of the work. But by your experience, is it a good practice, or you should more go to sourcing the testing and the development from one organization who can deliver you the finalized product with the quality and everything in?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you can get it all from one company, it would be excellent. But unfortunately, in the real world, factors such as money and time come into play. And Estonia doesn't have that many big companies, and those that are big enough to deliver the whole package also tend to charge a lot of money for it, which might seem too big at the start, but might in the end be cheaper than what we've shown here.
More questions? I have a question.
Yes.
Previous speaker mentioned that you should not tell your customer go all the way of telling the truth, how bad the situation really is. Have you been exposed to the same kind of ethical dilemma yourself?
I've had experience of telling the whole truth, and this wasn't that bad actually.
Did you end up in the ambulance yourself?
No bones broken.
More questions, please.
So I would have one more question. But if you look back to those old projects, think how much the customer side lack of experience contributed to those situations in the end.
That's another good point. A lot, which is to say that if you're a development company, you should also try to educate the customer a bit more, perhaps. The customer doesn't know a lot about IT potentially, or about software development. And on the other side, there is the developer that doesn't know much about the customer's field of business. So there should be a lot more communication between those two. That would also help a lot.
I had one brief question about, I think in one of your examples you said that, well, you actually had some documentation to base your guerrilla testing on. Mm-hmm. However, is it always the case? I mean, I'm used to not having any specs, but are you?
I'm okay with that.
Sure.
We can discuss it in our booth later.
Okay.
More questions?
Yes, hi. I was just wondering, in all these cases, was it like a first or one of the first projects for these companies? Did they have similar trouble earlier?
In some cases, no, I think in all cases there was trouble before as well. But it was mostly the first time that we were involved. But in the end, you cannot change people. You can try, but...
Have these case studies, I mean, how have the next projects after this burning one, or burning ones that you described, how have the next ones turned out? What have the customers learned from it?
These are all fairly recent. So we're still waiting for the results on that.
Any more hands? Yes. Kaspar, you can run again.
Just toss it, I'll catch it. Probably only hurt one or two people on the way up. So you made the comment about not being able to change people. What my experience as a consultant has been is that I put a caveat on that. You can't change people without pain. Basically, if they're not actually suffering, if they don't feel immediate need to change their behavior because it's very painful to them financially or personally or what have you, they will not change. Have you seen the same kind of thing?
Yes and no. Sometimes you can change them temporarily while they feel the pain, but when the pain goes away, they go back. But, well, you can try to educate them, and it's a slow learning process.
Actually, I take the risk and ask the question. How do you measure your testers about their success in so different projects?
That is an excellent question. Well, one thing, of course, is customer feedback and there's also reviews of the projects. For instance, when preparing this presentation, we found that we had actually a lot to be proud of that we hadn't noticed before, because it was just work. You have to look back on it to see if you've done good or bad decisions. So,
but not number of parts found in different projects.
No.
Okay, I think it's time to wrap up the session. A round of applause for Kristjan.